Hey everybody, Math Day 95 with Grandma. Here's our poem from Greg Tan this morning about multiplying. 7, heaven. 7 doesn't take much time, even though it's a prime. Here is all you have to do. First times 5 and then add 2. What is 7 times 7? Well, 7 times 5 is 35, and 7 times 7 or 7 plus 7 is just a double, 14. 35 plus 14 is 49. What is 7 times 5? It's 5 fives plus 2 fives. 7 times 5, 5 times 5 is 25, and 2 times 5 is 10, or 35. There we go. We're done with our circumference books. This book is called Spaghetti and Meatballs for All, a mathematical story written by Marilyn Burns and illustrated by Debbie Tilley. All kinds of things you need to make spaghetti. That's a pretty good looking plate of spaghetti. Spaghetti and meatballs for all. One fine day, Mrs. Comfort was busy tending the lettuce patch in her garden. It's been a long time since we've seen the family, she said to her husband. You're right, answered Mr. Comfort. He was stretched out on a bench, doing what he liked to do best in a vegetable garden, reading a cookbook. Maybe it's time for a family reunion, Mrs. Comfort said. A wonderful idea, Mr. Comfort agreed. Let's see. Menus. Dinner for 2, serves 4 to 6, banquets. How many people will we be having? They still have a landline. The Comforts called their children. They called their parents. Mrs. Comfort called her brother. Mr. Comfort called the next door neighbors, who were almost like family. Everyone could come. That's 32 people altogether, including us, Mr. Comfort said. What could possibly fit in our oven and still feed 32 people, he wondered aloud. Well, why not make your famous spaghetti and meatballs, said Mrs. Comfort. Good thinking, said Mr. Comfort. Now, what about renting some tables and chairs? Asked Mrs. Comfort, and she got out the telephone book. She didn't use Google. Two weeks later, the big day arrived. Mr. Comfort got up very early and spent all morning cooking. He baked 16 loaves of garlic bread and made 8 pounds of fresh pasta. He simmered 8 quarts of spaghetti sauce and rolled 96 meatballs. Mrs. Comfort picked all her ripe tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce for a salad. While Mrs. Comfort waited for the tables and chairs she had rented, she drew a seating plan. Then she got out the dishes, the silverware, the glasses, the tablecloths, and some vases. But when the rental company arrived, they were 1 chair short. Oh, don't worry, said Mr. Comfort. You'll think of something. Mrs. Comfort found a folding chair. Now the tables were ready. Each had 4 place settings, 4 chairs, and a vase with lovely cut flowers. Mr. Comfort came out of the kitchen balancing 8 plates of celery and olives, 1 for each table. Just after noon, the Comfort's daughter and her husband arrived with their 2 children. Welcome, said Mrs. Comfort. Come sit, said Mr. Comfort. Let's push 2 tables together so you can sit with us, suggested the Comfort's daughter. But there won't be room, Mrs. Comfort said. But there is, said Mr. Comfort. There's plenty of room and plenty of garlic bread. But they lost 2 chairs. Everyone was just about to sit down when a car pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Comfort's brother and his wife, their daughter, her husband, and their 2 sons all spilled out. Welcome, said Mr. Comfort. Sit down. Oh, let's push our two over 2 more tables so we can all sit together, said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. The Comfort's daughter and husband got up. No, but that won't work, said Mrs. Comfort. Oh, you're so right, Mr. Comfort said. We'll have to push 2 more tables together. But that won't work either, said Mrs. Comfort. You're right, said Mrs. Comfort's wife. Make way, shouted Mrs. Comfort's brother and the Comfort's son-in-law. They each carried over a table and put them side by side. You don't understand, Mrs. Comfort said. My plan was, but no one heard her. Everyone was too busy. Save some of the garlic bread for me, the new arrivals called. Me too, me too, me too, 3 more voices piped in. Look who's here, said Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's husband. It was the Comfort's next-door neighbors with their daughter and son. Hello, hello, said Mr. Comfort. So glad you're here. Have a seat while I get more garlic bread. But there's no place for them to sit, said Mrs. Comfort. Oh, don't worry, said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. We'll just divide these tables into 2 groups of 4. Oh, go ahead, said Mrs. Comfort. I'm telling you when. Oh, you fret too much, said Mr. Comfort. Bread, anyone? When all the tables had been arranged, everyone sat down. See, Mom, said the Comfort's daughter, it worked out just fine. Mrs. Comfort sighed. Hi, y'all, boomed a familiar voice. Mr. Comfort's father, mother, and their little terrier strolled in. Hello, Grandpa, said the Comfort's daughter. Oh, dear, said Mrs. Comfort. Where are they going to sit? No problem, said Mr. and Mrs. Comfort's next-door neighbor. If we just push all 8 tables into one long line, there'll be room enough for everyone. Actually, Mrs. Comfort began to explain. Absolutely, said Mr. Comfort. He was carrying several big bowls of salad. Better move fast or the salad will be really tossed. No sooner had everyone got inside when Mrs. Comfort's mother and father drove up in their yellow convertible. Hello, Grammy. Hello, Gramps, said the Comfort's daughter. Mrs. Comfort put down a fork. Oh, dear, she said. Too bad it wasn't blue like Grandma's. Oh, don't worry, we're all family, right? Gramps said. Let's just split this long line of tables in 2, then there'll be plenty of room for us to squeeze in. But it still isn't going to work because, Mrs. Comfort started to say, and a bowl of salad slid in her lap. Sorry, said one of Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's twin sons. Mr. and Mrs. Comfort and their 18 relatives and neighbors were finally all seated. They passed the salad and the bread. They shared the celery and the olives, and when they heard a cheery, "Hi, everyone," most of them held on to their plates. The Comfort son and his wife pedaled in on a bicycle for 2. Their twin daughters rolled in on skates. Didn't I tell you, Mrs. Comfort said, there's not enough room. No problem, Mom. We'll just divide these 2 lines of tables into 4 pairs. Okie dokie. Wait, you're all forgetting something, said Mrs. Comfort. We're out of salad over here, the Comfort's daughter said. Don't put any tomatoes in mine, said the Comfort's next-door neighbor's son. Is there more garlic bread, said Mrs. Comfort's mother. Why, who's got my silverware, said Mr. Comfort's father. Hey, Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's son said to his twin brother, that's my bread you're eating. Get your fingers out of my salad, the Comfort's son's daughter said to her twin sister. Don't play with your food, said the Comfort's son's wife. What did you say, asked Mr. Comfort. I said, Mrs. Comfort said. Beep, beep! A big red van parked at the curb. Out jumped Mrs. Comfort's sister with her husband and their triplets. All 3 of the triplets brought their boyfriends, who were also triplets. Now, do you see what I mean, Mrs. Comfort said. Where are they all going to sit? Well, my dear, said Mr. Comfort, I haven't served the spaghetti yet. We'll just move a few chairs, reset a few plates, and there will be plenty of room for everyone. I give up, said Mrs. Comfort. She sat down in her chair and didn't budge. I say, we divide the 4 parts of the table into 8 single tables, Mrs. Comfort brother said, and he and his wife moved 1 part of the tables apart. The triplets and their boyfriend moved the other 3 pairs. You see, said Mr. Comfort, it all worked out. I see everything is back exactly the way I had it, said Mrs. Comfort. I knew you'd think of something, said Mr. Comfort. Now, how many meatballs would you like? Spaghetti and meatballs for all.